One of the biggest barriers to entry when it comes to playing a second, third, or even fourth character in Path of Exile is always that pesky campaign. Even after doing it once per league, it feels like that's more than enough. And one of the only ways to remedy this is to either learn how to do the campaign faster or invest money into things that make your run faster, or that just make the campaign bearable. This patch there's been a couple new things that have surfaced as well as some new tech that I wasn't aware of, and I'm going to tell you about all of that in this video. Boys, I'm feeling a little bit better. My voice is still a little bit messed up, but I figured that I'd give you this video here on my thoughts on leveling if any of you are actually still playing the league right now. There's a few new uniques, there's a few new things to talk about, and I did at least want to give like the 3 or 4 of you out there that are potentially leveling a new character right now some information. And if you're watching this maybe at a later date, maybe it's pre-patch or something like that, all the information should still be relevant. Now remember boys, if you're enjoying this content, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest videos. Without further ado, let's get into it. So I have been leveling a SST Trickster. Now, unfortunately, I've been sick, so this build is like a week old or something like that right now, so I'm a little bit foggy on the details, but this patch 3.19, if you're not aware, did add in a bunch of new stuff that you can use, a bunch of new uniques, a bunch of updated uniques, and I also did learn about some tech thanks to Ye. I'm sure he'll say something down in the comments, but I just wanted to go over a couple of the new things that I've learned and kind of talk about leveling as it is right now and some interesting things beyond what we knew before. This isn't going to be like an in-depth how to level video. This is just, some extra tips and tricks that have happened this league. If you're interested in a more in-depth leveling video, I have put a link to one from last league that should be mostly up to date in the top right corner now. So let's talk about some of the new items. So one of the new items that I wasn't exactly super excited for was Thrill Steel. Thrill Steel is actually okay if you run into a circumstance where you absolutely cannot get Onslaught in any other way realistically. This build did run into that, so I guess Thrill Steel is all right, but for the most part, you're probably going to be using Gold Rim or something that just gives you life or anything else like that. However, in those very limited circumstances where Onslaught is simply not available from like a flask or the tree or from a link in your gear or something like that, Thrill Steel turns out it's okay. Let's talk about the real stuff. So one of the big ones is going to be Kikazaru. I was not exactly aware how good this would be for leveling, but it's actually pretty insane. So this ring has been changed to give you regenerate 3 life per second per level. So since we're using 2 of these, not only do we get, unaffected by curses, like 70 increased mana regeneration, some attributes, some lightning resist, we also are getting a ton of regeneration. Now, my character is level 63. I just killed Katava on this character. My defenses are in shambles. However, if you look at my life regeneration, we've got 378 life regen per second. That is a pretty substantial amount, seeing as I have invested basically nothing into life regeneration whatsoever. That is all simply coming from the Kikizarus. I've got no vitality, nothing like that going on. It's just the Kikizarus providing that. Because if you take 3 times 63 and then times that by 2, turns out you get a pretty decent amount of life recovery. This also makes it so that curses don't affect you while you're leveling up and makes it so that mana is a little bit easier to deal with. However, with this much life regeneration, you can pretty much put life tap on like every single ability that you've got, so it doesn't really matter very much. While I was leveling for the most part, before I swapped over to Inspiration, I had life tap in my main link, life tap in movement, life tap in pretty much everything, and I had no issues whatsoever. Now, beyond that, for a build that is doing mainly physical damage, or you maybe want to do an elemental damage build, the new Rimsaros that do have 100% of physical damage converted to cold does make it so that you really don't need to invest in anything like the Cold Mastery. You don't got to worry about anything extra. You can get your full conversion just from Rimsaro. This makes it significantly easier for a lower level character to not have to respec their tree so heavy, because most of the time previously you either had to use a different ability, convert it into different elements, or, just go physical scaling at first. Now you can scale elemental pretty early. You can get things like these elemental damage nodes, and you don't have to worry so much about, well, where am I going to get the rest of my conversion from? New Rimsaro is pretty good about that. This is a corrupted pair, but you can use them at a much lower level than what this particular item requires. On top of that, we do have the new Magnate. Magnate did get updated a decent amount. The main draw here is that you are now able to get the flash charges gain, the elemental resistance, and the strength all without having to have strength. However, it is pretty possible for a lot of builds, especially ones that are on the left side of the tree. This particular build is on the right side of the tree, and I still almost have 200. If I got 5 more points in strength, I'd get that 10% chance to double damage. But if you're anywhere on the side of the tree that is gaining strength from their points, you're going to have 200. You might even have 400, to be honest with you, on some builds. So Magnate's an absolutely excellent leveling belt. This can last you up until like yellow and red maps a lot of the time. It's honestly a pretty insane belt. 10% chance to deal double damage is nothing to like, look over. The 5% chance to deal triple damage isn't as good, but it is still pretty solid. But most builds aren't going to be getting to 400 strength very easily. Maybe if you're an Inquisitor or a Marauder or something like that, but the 200 is pretty easy when this belt is giving you up to 50. Now, something that I did use that I actually ended up being not a huge fan of was Ghost Writhe. Now, the thing about Ghost Writhe in particular, you need to find a way to be immune to stuns if you're going to level with this item, and you need to find a way to recover your energy shield. So when I was personally using this, I just was getting stunned constantly because I didn't have any way to be immune to stuns. There's a few ways to do that, and unfortunately, there's not really a lot of ascendancies that get stun immunity most of the time. If you're gonna go like an occultist or something like that, it's maybe okay if you want to spend those points, but most occultists don't go that node. So Ghost Rider was actually kind of bait in my opinion. I really didn't think that it worked out that well. Bitter Dream is actually pretty good, but those mana costs are pretty insane. You can link it with Life Tap. If you combine Bitter Dream with these Kikuzarus and use Life Tap, it's not as terrible, especially if you are going to be using like, just mainly the cold damage over time skills. It is pretty solid in that regard. Just put 2 of them in there. You can do like Creeping Frost and maybe like Vortex or something like that. It is a pretty solid weapon, especially if you're scaling any kind of elemental damage whatsoever. Another mention, if you aren't able to get a hold of a Magnate, there is this belt Feastbind. I think this is one of the better early ones, especially if you're doing just like generic attack damage and you are going to be using flasks pretty consistently. This is a pretty good belt. It would work in general instead of this one, especially for the tech that I'm going to talk to you about in a moment here. But Magnate, pretty hard to beat. Feastbind is a pretty good second though. Now let's address the fact that I am a trickster and my flasks are going constantly. Most of you probably already know what's going on, but this is going to be from the trader. There's been a lot of people talking about this. I'm pretty sure someone told me that Captain Lance has used this in like 10 builds or something already this league. Some crazy stuff like that, but this was something that was introduced to me by my mod, Yay. He has been messing around with the trader quite a bit recently, and one thing that he decided to do was get it so that we could have 2 permanent flasks up the entire time while we are leveling. It turns out that if you have Perma Quicksilver as well as Perma Quartz, and you can get whatever mods you like on here, turns out it's pretty good for leveling and makes you go pretty quickly. I've got extra movement speed on one of them, but the way that this works is that all that you need is you just need the gem, meaning that we've got Brutal Restraint, one with the Balbala, what a name, and you need a spot to put the trader. Now, beyond that, you only need a couple points of flask duration or increased flask charges gained. One of the easiest ways to go about this is this wheel right here. Natural Remedies, Flask Effect Duration, and Flask Effect Duration is plenty to be able to sustain it permanently. Now, you might be saying, well, there's not that many flask nodes around the rest of the tree, and you are correct. There's not really that many flask nodes that will work. There's some here, there's some here, there's some here. If you're on right side of the tree, you're not going to have any issues. If you are on like top side of the tree or left side of the tree or bottom side of the tree, well, there is an answer for you, and that is going to be the Arrow Dancing Impossible Escape. So when you slot this in, it's going to allow you to take all of these nodes here. So I'll just go ahead and pop this in some random spot. And as you can see, we can take these 3 nodes here. So this has been relatively cheap. I don't know if it'll get bought out. There's not really that many people playing the game at the moment, but it should work in the future if it is, a little bit better economy wise. But this Impossible Escape plus the Magnate does make it so that with just these 3 couple nodes, you can permanently sustain these 2 flasks, run through the campaign a lot faster, and make your life a little bit easier. One other thing of note is that the Tier of Purity does have level 10 Purity of Elements, which is pretty interesting since this item only requires level 5. You can use this if you just want, a free aura very, very early on and get yourself some resistances. Typically, you're going to be using like a gold rim or something like that, so this isn't that useful. However, definitely a lot of interesting stuff when it comes to leveling this league, so that is pretty cool, because let's be honest, a lot of the time when you are leveling in Path of Exile, it just kind of feels like you're going through the motions. And that is going to be it for the video. Just wanted to give you guys a quick video talking about some of the interesting things with leveling. It is One of those things that I do think you should invest a little bit of time in figuring out how to make it go faster, what items and what kind of combos and stuff that you can do that can make it a little bit simpler, where on a build like what I was doing, you could literally just like run through an AFK 95% of the time and not have to worry about a single thing while you're going through. Tends to feel a lot better when you don't have to focus so much on it. I want to give a quick shout out to my patrons. Thank you for all of your support, as I do now slowly try to transition into full-time. That didn't work too well at the beginning of this league, unfortunately. The timing was pretty bad, but the plans are still the same. I'm just gonna have to do it a little bit slower than I was previously. But as said, as I transition into full-time, there'll be more content over there. But for the moment, remember, boys, if you're enjoying this content, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest videos, and stay safe out there in Ray class, and I'll see you guys in the next video.